Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out 5 things I hate about living in a historic town.
Hi, Jimmy here,
Hey
and
Jimmy.
today we're going to do something slightly different. I've been watching a lot of
Okay.
Walter's World recently, and watching
like
Mark's
Walter's
videos
World.
gave me a bit of an idea. He does videos about things that he loves and doesn't love about certain places that he's visited. So today we're going to talk about 5 reasons I hate living in a historic city.
Wales. I've learned that.
So, some of you might know I live in the city of York in England at the moment, and York is an amazing town.
Heard
It's
of
got
it.
a fantastic history. It's got 2,000 years of...
Americans call it Old York. Is York in the northeast of England? Ah, yes. Yes. Down the road from Manchester and Leeds. Wasn't York the capital at some point? Like ancient Roman Britannia stuff? Let's just look at some photos of York. Gorgeous. Flowers, yes. Beautiful. Topiaries. Oh. Could use a scrubbing. Beautiful. Topiary. Brutalist. Water. Oh. Electricity. Flowers. A fountain. Flowers. Statues. A fountain. Flowers. A church. Ruins. Could use a scrubbing. Scrub that thing. Scrub it. It's scrubbed. Nice. Yes. My impression of York is that it's full of many old buildings, flowers, statues, fountains, and water.
continuous occupation from the Romans through the medieval period to the modern day. So we've got Roman remains under pubs.
That's cool.
We've got full Roman bathhouses underneath buildings. We've got the medieval city walls that you can walk around. They used to be 3 chocolate factories in the city. There's 1 now. They still make Nestle chocolate here. There's loads and loads of stuff here. It's an amazing town. I really like living in York, but I really hate living in York. And there are some reasons for it that I hope you'll understand.
5 of them,
So I'm going to
apparently.
preface this with no judgment if you are in any of the above, in any of the stuff that we're going to talk about. There's no judgment. It's totally cool. I am or have been
No,
as
you
well.
are judging
But
it. That's
the
the
first thing
whole
I
point
hate
of the
about
video.
living in a historic city, and this applies to a lot of historic city dwellers all over the world that I've talked to, is the tourists. Like, no shade on Mark, no shade on Walter's World. It's a tourist channel. He is a professional tourist, and I love that, and I respect that, and I would do that if I could. But York is a city of 150,000 people, and every year 2 million people visit a city
That's a
that
big
is
difference.
basically designed to have fewer than 100,000 people living in it. Like the city centre, the walled city of York, is now less than a third of York. And the majority of people who live in York do not live in the city centre. And there are reasons for that. But 2 million people a year, that's a lot of people. And there's a reason that the city streets look like this most of the time. Like, this is one of the main streets in the city. This is where the Poundland, basically the dollar store, is. This is the street that leads to the hardware store in the centre of town, where the cheap sandwich bakery shop is, where there's the chain coffee shop that everybody goes to when they're not working and doing street performance work. And this is just a Tuesday. Like, I didn't film any of this on a holiday or a special occasion. This is just a Tuesday at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It is crazy here. The number of people that you have to fight your way through, especially on super historic streets like the Shambles, the old Butcher's Street, is just mind-blowing.
Oh, look
and
at
these
it.
are no longer
It's
really
beautiful.
functional streets because of that. So the volume of people visiting the city means that some streets just don't function anymore.
Okay. I can sympathize with that. It's tough to get around physically. Data presented at the conference showed that 8.9 million people visited the city in 2023. That's a lot more than he's saying. With 1.2 million of them traveling internationally, they brought an economic impact of 1.7 billion pounds, with 1.2 billion spent by visitors. The data also revealed that tourism supported 17,000 jobs across the city. So if tourism stopped in York, that'd be 17,000 less jobs. It'd be... that's so much money. But anyway, Go on, tell me why you hate those billions of dollars.
They are just effectively displays for people to take selfies in front of, which is kind of depressing when you think there used to be 30 butcher shops on the Shambles and now there are 0. That's kind of sad. And it leads me on to the second thing that I hate about living in a historic city, and that is the traffic. Half of the people, so 1 million people a year, visit York in their cars or in hire cars. It is appalling trying to drive in this city. There's no free parking anywhere. I don't actually have a parking permit because I don't live in a street where you can have a parking permit, so I have to just pay for on-street parking, even though I live here and I need to go to the dentist and buy bread and stuff. And it's a very first world problem, but I hate it. I hate the fact that I need a car in the first place to get things done in this city because so many things have been pushed out of the city centre. I hate the traffic, and a lot of that traffic is visitor traffic. A lot of that is people coming to the city in their car, parking up as close to the city centre as possible, and I get it. I have friends and family with mobility issues, so I do that as well. Again, I'm not judging, but it just makes it more difficult to live in a place that should be wonderful. Don't get me wrong. Nearly half of the rest of the people who visit come by train, and that is fantastic and to be encouraged.
Use a train. Yeah, paying for parking sucks. In your own, to get to your own house too, that sucks. I'm sorry, buddy.
Of people and of cars are two of the big reasons why I kind of disenjoy this town a lot sometimes. I'm stood here in an allotment. I'm basically in the allotments just outside the city walls, which is amazing that there are allotments here. There aren't enough. There should always be more. But the third big reason that I don't love this city sometimes is the trash. York is a town where a lot of people come to visit. A lot of people come to the horse racing here. The horse racing has been going on in York for 300 years, so it is a part of the city's history. But when people come for the races, they come to get smashed. You will be walking into town at 11 a.m. on a Friday morning, and there will be people literally sitting in the gutter being sick because they've been drinking since they got on the train at 9 a.m. It is insane. Wow. It beggars belief, the amount of cans and bottles and takeaway wrappers, high-heeled shoes, ties, various other items of equipment that I don't want to talk about on my...
Did I see a Budweiser? Oh my god, that's a Budweiser case. There's another one. They're getting sloshed on Budweiser? Yo. I'm so sorry that Budweiser exists. Let me just apologize on behalf of all Americans. Sorry about that. I will say, though, all the photos I saw of York look pretty nice. I didn't see garbage around. At least the garbage is eventually cleaned up off the streets. Can't say that about Los Angeles.
Various other items of equipment that I don't want to talk about on my channel that you just see...
No, talk about it.
Littering the streets.
Talk about it.
It is awful. A lot of businesses, including one that I work with, shut down when the horse racing comes on because it just isn't worth it. You'll get windows broken. You'll get people peeing up against your shop. It's just horrendous. I've been assaulted by drunk people during the races just for dressing like I do, I guess. It was very unclear, but I hate how much garbage there is in this city.
It's a feminine vest.
And that is, again, just due to the volume of people who are using takeaway wrappers or who are buying snacks, and then there aren't enough litter bins. And that's not the fault of the tourists and the visitors necessarily. That's also on the city council and the fact that they prioritise trying to get people to spend money on the tourist traps instead of maintaining the city for the people who actually live here. So, City of York Council, if you're watching, you need to up your game a little bit on the number of litter bins we have in this town.
If they know they're getting those tourists, there's really no excuse, right? Unless it's a funding thing. Waste management provides a lot of jobs, and it's a great way to launder money.
It's sad because York is a city built on a river, and that river is lined with pubs. And a lot of those pubs lose their glasses and their beer mats into the river. So the river is often full of trash, and there are swans and geese and ducks. We've even got a couple of otters trying to live their lives, and they're struggling because there's so much litter being thrown into the river, and it's a real issue, and it's difficult to police. The reason for I kind of don't love living in a historic city is it makes everything expensive. If you want to buy a pint of beer in York, at the moment, the average price for a pint of beer in York is £5.10. That is too expensive for a pint of beer. There are
good to me.
breweries in the city walls of York, and the beer is so expensive here, you might as well be in London. Food is expensive here. Housing is expensive here.
That doesn't sound so bad, honestly.
I am paying well above the national average for my rent, and I live outside the city centre in a new build that's already getting damp and leaky because it's a new build.
What's the average rent price in the UK? Average rent price in UK. Average private rent for England was £1,276. What's the average rent price in USA? $1,563. Yeah, I think it's higher than that. I don't believe that.
And it's not great. If I wanted to buy a studio flat, so a bedsit, a one-room flat, if I wanted to buy a room in the city of York, the least I can possibly hope to pay in the city, within the walls, is £250,000. And that's one of the reasons why there are so many empty shops in the city. The shops that survive are the shops that cater to people who want to come here to get drunk, or eat a kebab after their night out, or buy some tourist tat.
They probably have to.
Those
That's
are
the only way they
basically
can survive.
the shops that will survive. If you're doing booze, drunk people food, or souvenirs, your shop's probably going to be okay. But so many shops are empty in the city because the price of the ground rent in the city is astronomical. It is so high that independent businesses will survive 6 months, and then the cost of the rent alone will be far too high for them to cope with. And that is tragic. Like, we lose so many good businesses here. There used to be crafting shops that were great in the city. We had knitting shops, we had more butcher shops and bakers and greengrocers in the city centre, and so many of those can't survive that they've either had to completely shut down, move way out of town, or they pop up as market stall holders. And it's great.
Do you think some of that's from online stores? You can basically buy everything online now.
If they can still do that, but it means that a lot of the city centre just doesn't work as a city anymore. It's a giant tourist trap. It's kind of like a...
Yeah, I don't think that's from the... part of it's definitely got to be from the tourism. You know? But if it wasn't for the tourism, I don't think those shops would be around anyway. I don't think there's a market for a knitting shop. You know? You go to michaels.com and you got all the yarn you could ever imagine. A lot more than can be housed in a little store in downtown York.
The fifth thing that I don't like, you may have other things that you don't like if you live in a historic city, feel free to put them in the comments, is the wasted space in this city. So the majority, 90-odd% of the buildings that you are seeing here are empty. Above the ground floor is empty, because there is just this drive to get an empty shop full with a business in it to make money from tourists in the city centre. And the problem with that is, whilst that is all happening, the building itself is dilapidating because it's not been occupied, there isn't a business in it, nobody is actually paying money for it, it's effectively just wasted space, and that's happening all over the city. There is a full street in the city,
happening around
Market
the world,
Street,
I think.
which is essentially vacant, which is ridiculous. That shouldn't happen in a city as bustling and as busy as York, a city with 150,000 people living in it, with 2 million visitors a year. There shouldn't be a street 200 yards long with a dozen shops on it that is impossible to keep filled.
That's happening around the world. Every city. I don't think it's just in York. It's not just in historic cities. It's everywhere. Yeah, real estate agents aren't really talking about commercial real estate and how the value has gone down since the pandemic. No one's really talking about that. I mean, it sucks that Grandma's knitting store is having to close down, but it's kind of the natural progression of our times. It's just the way it is. Grandma's gotta start grandmasknitting.com. Store all the yarn in her garage. Or in the garden shed. In the garden shed. Stock up on stamps. Now Grandma's working in a warehouse for Amazon.
Like, all of the shops on this street are empty, and they've just put big posters on the windows saying, "Come to York, but be respectful." It's just... It's mind-boggling. I don't understand how that can work, but it's happening all over town, and it's really, really sad. Like,
All over the
there are
world,
so many empty shops and empty flats, places where people used to live, places where people used to practice crafts and trades. And it's one of the things that I love. I'm very lucky that I get to go to Venice semi-frequently. Like most years I go to Venice for a long weekend. And in Venice, there are businesses that have been there for generations that are craftspeople. Like they have bookbinders, they have printers, they have paper makers, they have shoemakers and cobblers. And in York, a lot of that has gone. Right, there was a full street in the city centre that was the street where people made books.
Who's going to the
they
book
printed
place,
books,
though?
and
Who's
they
going
bound
to the
books.
bookbinders?
And that street is now entirely dedicated to the tourist trade, which is great because it means people are spending. I'm filming a video.
Who would be so brave to open a bookbinding business now? A bookbinding business? Right now. We don't even need books, much less a bookbinding place. We still have bookstores, thank goodness, but I would imagine most books are not bought at bookstores. I sympathize with this guy, but I feel like a lot of the stuff he's talking about is it's just kind of the state of the world. You gotta kind of get used to it and accept it and work around it.
And then a little old lady interrupted me whilst I was filming and would not leave me alone. But those are my 5 things that I kind of hate, disenjoy, don't really like very much about living in an historic city. You might have some different pet peeves. If
the old lady was begging for money because her knitting store closed because of the internet. Thanks, Amazon. Thank Bezos.
I would not trade the amazing history and the amazing research opportunities and all of the cool stuff I get to see every day. I get to walk across a city wall, a medieval city wall, to get into town every day if I want to. That's priceless. So, diolch yn fawr iawn, unwaith eto am wylio. Thank you very much, as ever, for watching. If you want to support the channel, then like, subscribe, join the Patreon, send me a coffee thing, all of that good stuff. And until the next time, tan o tro nesa, hwyl am y tro.
Hwyl am y tro. So he had 5 things he loves about? Sounds like a lot of the stuff that he hates about it are things that come from a lot of people being there. The tourists, the traffic, the garbage, rubbish. Y'all, if you're thinking about going to York, don't go. Don't do it. Stay out of York. Come to New York and give us your money. Give us your dollars. Give us your garbage. Your rubbish. It's a quick boat ride across the Atlantic with very low risk of sinking anymore. This was interesting. I do kind of wonder about those little towns in England because they must get just overrun with people. And it would kind of ruin the experience, I can imagine. But they're giving a lot of money. I don't know. I'm torn about that. I don't live in one. Do I? I don't know if Los Angeles would be considered a historic town. Oh, technically it is, I guess, but not like York. You know? Anyway, this was interesting. Well, thank you all for watching this with me, and I'll see you next time. Later.